That's it up there, right? That's it.
Yeah.
Hello. I wasn't sure what the front door was.
It's kind of hidden here.
Hello.
Glad you made it.
Yeah, it's beautiful out here.
You're kind of here at the wrong time of the year. You're in the time where everything is dead.
I like this fencing. You created like a natural fence.
That's all like willow sticks that have just been stuck in the ground. And so willow has this thing that it roots itself really easily from a stick. So you can really create hedges easily.
So you came out here, you wanted to be in the woods?
I took an interest into foraging, learning about wild food, and the forest here, it's one of the hotspots of Europe in like mushroom diversity. And so I was like, okay, I can actually live off the land here. The land, we bought it, and there was only this shed that I set up to be able to live in it while I was working on the house. Then there's the house. It's a straw bale house. Like all the materials put into the house were found here. And so building this house cost me 15,000 euro. It's really nothing because materials are pretty much free. It's also one of the things that the house is 50 square meter. And so that means that I could submit it myself without having to go through an engineer and an architect. So I drafted the plans myself and made the calculation with a friend of mine who was studying mechanical engineering. And so I managed to do it like without having asked any professional to have any input on it.
And was it difficult to get it permitted?
One of the things that was hard for them to approve was the round walls. Because the traditional houses around here, they're like square blocks aligned to the street.
Yeah. Out here, you do see how different your home looks to, you know, I mean, you're the only
Non-square.
Non-square,
Yeah. But also, they couldn't say that it didn't fit within the local environment because it's made entirely with material that's extracted directly here. So the color of the house is that of the earth. There's a whole philosophy behind this project is to try to live a life where I don't need an intake of much energy, as well as not needing much money. For me, the house is only a tool for me to build with these materials because they're free and you can build with them as an amateur. You don't have to be a professional to actually mix some mud and stick them on a wall. But with that, it's actually the whole possibility of emancipation from labor. If I don't have a 20-year loan, then that's 20 years less of my life that I have to work. Yeah.
You built everything here.
Yeah, everything with my hands, yeah.
Wow. Wait, that's really impressive. And how do you keep it warm?
I just cook on the wood stove and then that's enough to heat the house.
My toes are cold. This feels so good. And
That's one of the advantages of the earthen floor right next to a window.
there's no heating in the floor.
No, it's just because it's thermal mass. The design of the house is based on the coupling of good insulation plus a lot of thermal mass on the inside. Because there's so much earth inside the house, then that means that it acts more like as a heat battery. So when I put on a fire, then if I come back the next day without having been in here, then like from just 3 small logs, then the house will still be, like for instance, I put a fire yesterday and it's like 0 outside and it's 18 degrees in the house.
It's really warm. I like like everything's wood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and wood, earth and stone, that's the main materials in there.
And he did it for very little money.
Because the materials are pretty much free. The only materials I had to buy basically were planks and bits of wood that had been sawed.
And then the kitchen, there's a lot going on there. I love these oranges hanging there. What are they?
Yeah, it's like the point is to try to have multiple uses for things. This, when I put on a fire, I might use like 3 logs of that size, and that will be enough to heat the house for the whole day. So when it's on, then I like put on a bucket like that heats enough water that I can, with this pipe, send it to the shower water tank. So then I have hot water for the showers, and then I created this dryer on top of it that I can like move with this pulley system. So that's I put it out of the way to be able to cook, and then when I don't need to cook anymore, I can put it down so that it dries faster. And then I cook on it, and then the house, because of all the earth around it and the stones that are behind, it stays warm for much further than the duration of the fire. There's another thing here, a Swedish oven. It's like an insulated box. It's like a box inside a box, and over here you have like 15 centimeters of insulation, and inside there I'd like put a survival blanket, and over here there's like warm soup. I put it on the fire in the oven yesterday when I put on the fire, and then I put it in there. And so that means that it's been like stewing for the whole night, and it's still very warm at this moment. So it's like a way to do slow cooking by minimizing your use of wood. So, and I can also use that box to make miso, for instance. You have to maintain an environment at like 35 degrees.
And you don't have a refrigerator, I'm guessing?
I have a refrigerator, but it's not plugged in at the moment.
So that's you solar?
Yeah, I'm on solar, so the two systems. In the summer, I have an abundance of electricity, and in the winter, it's just as cold outside as it is in the fridge. So I just put things on the windowsill. I can just pick things from here. Like, yeah, I have some cheese and miso and different things, but
Are those things that you have bought then?
No, some things I've bought, like cream, for instance. But other than that, miso I make myself. Usually it's made with soybean, but I tend to prefer using the beans that I can grow here. Yeah. So back here, I use this as storage space for food as well. So I have like different squashes that
That's for your garden.
will last me. Yeah, and like crates of potato.
And there's stuff underneath?
Yeah, more potatoes. The stuff here is things that are foraged or cultivated. So there's beans, there's hazelnuts, there's walnuts, dried apples. There's a whole orchard with 150 trees. There's also like a lot of dry mushrooms. So those are like chanterelles.
And that you dried maybe over the stove as well?
Yeah, actually, my house kind of works in two separate systems, a winter system and a summer system. The winter system is the one with the dry rack over the stove, but in the summer, you're able to dry things outside. Mushrooms actually improve if you dry them in the sun. They actually produce more vitamins, so I try to dry them outside.
Is this an underground jalapeno?
Actually, that's actually an interesting thing. So in order to make earth plasters, you have to get a lot of earth, obviously. So therefore you dig holes. And because a hole was dug here, then I was like, no, I have a hole, might as well build a passive greenhouse in it. Well, it's not very impressive at the moment because it's like the coldest time of winter. And all of the materials are salvaged, so somebody was throwing away old windows. So I was growing peppers and tomatoes and aubergines up until like a month ago, and then the first real frost came, and so they all died in.
So the season with this, how does it compare to
I had my last tomatoes 3 weeks ago, like December 10. But outside tomatoes don't last after October.
You see how the wall here.
It's not actually walls, it's actually the earth and then filled in with like mud.
So, I mean, this is a hole.
Yeah, the earth is up to here.
So, and then here is also, this is just the ground, right?
Yeah, this is also just the ground. Like the angle of the window is calculated to maximize the intake of the sun in the winter, but minimize it in the summer. So it doesn't overheat in the summer.
And behind you, you see, that's wall, that's not dirt. So is that cob?
Yeah, it's cob. It's actually the same thing as the house, except you don't have the last layer of plaster. I didn't really bother because it's much easier to replaster thing by just throwing mud on it, because a greenhouse is usually quite humid as well. So earthen materials don't really tend to last very long and you have to redo them. I'm growing like mushrooms as well, so that was like a shiitake block. You can still see the white bits on it is the mycelium. That whole thing produced a couple of kilos of shiitake.
And here,
That's a cold frame. There's a window over here, you see. I put those windows on top, and so that means it's a mini greenhouse. So I can start plants 2 months earlier. So I don't work on the garden for winter because it's torture putting your hands in wet earth. There's other things to do, for instance, preparing all of your wood because it actually heats you up to cut it.
And are you cutting it from the forest?
I've actually never had to cut a live tree. We have quite a few trees that are just falling. Yeah, so all of these are garden beds. Like over here, I planted garlic like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So that's one of the only crops that you can plant before the winter. Over here, there's a lot of small fruits. It's currants.
Like berries.
Yeah, it's trying to make systems that produce food passively. So that's a walnut tree. Around the walnuts, I put small berry fruits. Yeah, over here, there's my mushroom grove. It's logs that I inoculate. Over here, there's spent logs, so they won't produce anymore. But you could see there were these dowels that I inoculated with spores of shiitake.
Okay, so you're not relying on just foraging.
No, not just the concept. Tending the wild is sometimes easier than erasing everything that's there and starting from scratch. You can still see a little shiitake. And so, for instance, here you have like a wetland, and I introduced cattail to it. And cattail is a really nutritional plant that it's quite tasty as well. You harvest the shoot and it kind of has like a artichoke texture and taste, and it's quite abundant and it's perennial as well. And then it sends rhizomes that then go and colonize the nearby land, so that way it does all the farming for you. While we're here, I might as well show you like my water system. The fact that the land is in a slope, it's easy to have gravity-fed systems. You could feel it with your feet. The ground is very wet. It's a wetland, and so if you dig, if you just put a spade into the ground, then you actually find a spring. Like you can see, there's a resurgence of water. So I found the spring and harvested it, and so I'm filling up this 1,000-liter tank, and this goes straight into my house. We're moving further into wetlands, so like be careful where you step. So under these stones.
So this is not, you're not using any kind of river or anything. This is literally just groundwater.
Yeah, it's the groundwater that you kind of just funnel into a pipe. So I have this pipe where water comes from. Right now I moved it a bit, so there's a bit of silt in the water, but otherwise when it's not disturbed, then the water gets quite clear. And of course I can't drink it like that. Afterwards I have to like filtrate it.
Quite simple then.
Yeah, it's very simple.
And so you dug, did you dig your trench all the way down?
So like this trench here, that was just to evacuate the soil at the beginning, but then...
It's just a natural kind of...
Yeah. So, and I put that on top so that leaves don't go in.
It looks so much part of the place, yeah, you would never know it. And then that fills up. What do you think it takes to...
Well, we can go and see the flow. So right now I'm waiting a bit because I disturbed the soil over there, so the water is quite brown, but after a while it will clear, and so I'll put it back in there.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah.
Flowing like that constantly. So you could fill this thing up fast.
Yeah, and then 1,000 liter that lasts here for quite a bit. Right now it seems like it's getting clearer, so I'll just put it back in.
And you just plastic wrapped the...
Yeah, I did, because that deters algae from growing inside.
So you have just like right about a slope, enough for sort of farming back here.
And also like the presence of fruit trees already on the land was a selling point. The fact that it's on the south facing hill, because on the other side of the valley, then you wouldn't have been able to get your solar panels to be sufficient enough, because I'm completely off-grid. And also like for the water, I'm only relying on my spring.
Did it take you a long time to find the land?
It was maybe a year and a half. The land was 35,000 for 4,000 square meters.
So from here you see your roofs.
Yeah, the roofs. So the turf is actually just the ground from here. The ground that was moved away for the build, we put it aside, and then when the roof was ready to be put on, then we just put it back on. So it's the same plants as the ones that were there before. And so when you look at it from satellite images, you don't actually see the house. So for a while I kind of evaded government control, and my house didn't appear on like tax files.
So here behind you is what?
An annex. If you build something smaller than 20 square meters, in France you don't have to submit a building permit. So I built a smaller structure, and I tried to make it a structural straw bale house.
The roof feels really loaded with dirt. Like it feels like a big pile.
Yeah, it's actually, there's like 15 centimeters of earth on top of it, so it's actually very heavy.
Not a problem.
It's only a problem if your beams are too small. Last winter there was a time when there was 50 centimeters of snow on it and it didn't collapse, so I'm quite confident now that it's holding. Yeah. The other house, you had like a post and beam system. The straw bale is actually only the insulation, whereas with this, like the straw bales are structural and they support the roof. So this one is unfinished.
Oh wow, you see the floor.
So that's like the floor before last layer of plaster. And inside here, you can see the reciprocal roof structure. So usually when you have a roof, you usually have posts that are supporting it. But right there, there's nothing that actually supports the roof aside from the rafter next to it. So like in order to build it, you have to like put a temporary post called a Charlie post. And then you put all the other rafter. And when you have the last rafter, there's like the moment of truth where you pull on the post and hope that it doesn't all collapse on yourself.
Sur les outils.
And you managed to put a skylight in.
Yeah, well, it's like When you do a reciprocal roof, you have to have an opening in the middle, and so otherwise the roof is too slanted. So might as well make it a feature. Because like I'm planning on making it a bathhouse, because that's one of the things that I'm really missing. Having like lived in Japan is like I miss like taking hot baths.
Yeah, you already see the filter here, right?
Yeah, so like the water that you saw from back there goes up here, and so that's my first layer of filter. So these are intended to go inside this structure, and this one goes back into the house.
And here you see the walls.
Yeah, so inside, if you see a wall like this, you can kind of see how thick it is. So that's like the thickness of a straw bale. And so on both sides of the bale, then you have to like put another layer of 10 centimeters of cob. So cob is a mix of like earth and fiber, so you can still see the straw in it. So the straw makes it so that when the mix dries, all the water that was contained in it will evaporate and create like pockets of air. And so if you don't have a fiber to hold it together, then the thing might crack and then fall apart. So that makes it like really hard. So you can like...
Did it take a long time to dry?
Yeah, it does, and so that's why I've been like keeping it open, so it stays aerated and it doesn't like mold. So you can kind of see patches of remaining mold that were on top of the wet walls.
Will you do something for this?
No, it's not a problem. It's all in surface now, and because the wall has dried. If it looks dried on the outside, then that means it's really dried on the inside, because the moisture goes further out. And once the place is used, if there's a source of heat inside. Right now it's like it's cold and there's no source of heat, so it takes more time to dry like that.
What about the floors? How do you make the floor?
So that's a raw earth floor. There's many layers. The first layer is foam glass, I think. It's like a material that's actually the only material I had to buy for this structure. Foam glass is like a recycled windshields, broken up glass that's been heated up, a material that's very light and aerated, but that still holds structural weight. So that means you can put it underneath as a floor insulation. And one of the properties of that is that it doesn't have any capillarity. So it doesn't draw water up, meaning that you can build an earth floor on top of it without it ever like drawing moisture from underneath. And then like afterwards it's just bringing wheelbarrow full of earth. And then I put like a first layer of wet slip. So yeah, it's basically mud. And then I troweled it so that it seems like as level as possible in preparation for the final plaster.
And these beams are great too. So I see they curve, they're nothing straight, they're kind of...
Self-harvested as well. I like actually went into the back forest on the land and selected the right size of trees. And so those are maybe 15-year-old trees. So by taking them out, you just reduce the competition with other nearby trees. And then I had to bring them down the hill by myself. I did the work of a workhorse, but by just like harnessing it to my hips and then walking down the hill.
What do we see here?
Another weird bit is that because of the reciprocal roof, you have each rafter that goes out. At some point, the planks, they will be too spaced out for the planks to hold. Because you see right there, that's already quite large as a space for the plank, because you've seen how much earth there is on top. So the weight of it might have cracked the planks. So for here, for instance, where you see the spacing between the rafters is quite huge. I had to weave a hammock, and on top you have the tarp that's actually making the building waterproof. So that was a bit of a job as well.
So how much time did it take you to bring this structure up to this point?
So that's also one thing, is like the other house, I built it with volunteers. But this one, I kind of wanted to try how much time it would take you if you were doing it by yourself. That's like 2 summers worth of work.
You only work in the summer.
Yeah, you only work in the summer on like earthen buildings, because if you have piers that are too wet or too frosty, then the plasters don't work.
And all this was permitted?
Yeah, I had to submit a building permit. The thing that I really had to defend is the aesthetics of the house, what it looked like. They don't actually care whether the house is well built. And so where the street is defines how the house has to be built. And so right now I'm kind of lucky that the street is in a curve. So then that means that I could align my house right next to this curve. And so why they allowed me to build round walls is because I advocated that the whole point of the house was to make it solar passive. And so that therefore like maximizing the solar intake was really important. And therefore by having round walls, I could put windows so that the sun could go in at every moment of the day. And so therefore they signed in the permit. I made a point of like not wanting to use any concrete. Like the foundation, so there's another technique called the rubble trench, which was going to a demolition site nearby and asking them if they had rubbles. It's bits of old buildings that have been crushed. When you compact it, then all the little pieces go into the big pieces and it makes it dense enough to build on, but also it makes it permeable. And then at the bottom of the foundation, there's a drain, so that all the water that accumulates at the bottom will then be moved away from the house. Because the straw bales can't really sit on wet ground, and so you have to elevate them from the ground by having a small wall. And so I have to learn how to make masonry. It's a very diverse activity because every time you have to change your skill set.
You are using techniques that were already in the area.
Some of them, some techniques were traditional from here, but also from other places. It's not like there's many places in the world that have used earth and straw to build their houses. But also there's new techniques that I incorporated in this. Making a straw bale is kind of like an industrial process because you need the machines to compress the thing to harvest. Yeah. And so that's not something that was done like 2 centuries ago. I think the first straw bale houses were made in the 1850s somewhere in America, I think Arkansas, at places where you had big monocultures of wheat. But like nowadays, the straw is kind of like a waste material from this kind of agriculture that is like selecting the wheat for the grain. So it's kind of a waste to not use them when it's such a great building material. Mm-hmm. The concept is to take a bale, a standard straw bale, and then you stack them and use them as the foundation for your walls. And then it's all plastered with earth. Usually in straw bale houses, the ones made professionally, for instance, professionals don't tend to use earthen plasters on the outside because then you have like, in terms of insurance and everything, but because it's all self-built, then I could experiment a bit with it and take some liberties with the materials that I would put in. And so you can see kind of how an earthen plaster fares when it's put on the outside. So right here where it's never exposed to the water, it's still like it's been 5 years now that it's been like that and it hasn't changed at all. And right here at the front of the house where it's a bit more exposed, and you can see that it's been eroded a bit from the rain. The bigger piece of straw starts getting out of it.
So what will you do?
In a couple of years, I might have to just refresh that one. That's one of the things that's really easy to do. I'll have to like just remake some plaster and just put it over the top.
You just keep an eye on your house.
Yeah, it's like any house needs some sort of maintenance.
Tell me about where do you put windows on a house like this?
Well, first of all, the conception of the house started with the windows. I kind of had the windows before the house, so I could make the plans based on the windows that I had available. I didn't have a door when I started doing the house, so I just made an opening that would be enough to go in. But then obviously there's no door that come at this size. So somebody was throwing away a front door, but I had to like saw all the bottom off in order to fit it. So it's a bit low now, but it's not really a problem. And it's even less of a problem when you come from the outside because you're further lower.
I like that it's matching with the structure of your tatami.
Yeah, that's just milk paint.
Milk paint?
Yeah. There's like a protein in milk that it dries up and is useful to make paint with. The other colors, that's like a natural clay. Actually, I can show you how to make that. I'll just get a bit of clay. Yeah, so that's just earth. So you just like mix that with some water and then just apply it to some things.
But that's how you did the walls. It's so simple.
Is that simple? Yeah. That's just dirt, and when it dries then it will be much lighter. So the earth plaster is all the same, but then I changed the color on the inside of the house because I wanted it to reflect the light a bit more. And that tone is like the one that I found inside the forest. There was like a place where you had earth, that color, so I just harvested a bucket of it, and then you can turn the bucket into a clay paint. So that way you can really easily change the color of your earth plasters. The floor is the same plaster as the one that's on the outside of the house, but it's covered as well with linseed oil. And the linseed oil is an oil that polymerizes. So with contact with oxygen, it like forms chains of complex carbon bonds, and then it makes it like hard. So that means it can actually hold some weight a bit more. And at the end, there's a last layer of beeswax. So that's when water spills on top of it, you can easily sweep it off.
And the side there is a kind of cordwood?
Yeah, it's a cordwood. So like I had a log that was remaining when I finished the house, and so I was like, okay, I don't need that log, so might as well like cut it in pieces and like make a cordwood wall. There's two types of inside walls here. There's like the cordwood wall here, and then the other walls that you find here. These inside walls, these are made with just woven willow, plastered with earth. It's a technique that's not uncommon actually. Even in conventional buildings around the area, you find earth plasters inside that are done with this technique of just like mixing earth with straw and then weaving it around a wooden structure. There's many willows around the area, and it's like a very common tree because it was planted because of when people lived a more peasant lifestyle. The willow tree was a center tree because it produces a lot of material. Like the door here is made with woven sticks of willow.
I like how it's like almost like a forest. Like
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think there's some studies on the effect of natural material on the human psyche. It seems that we are wired to actually feel welcomed in places that feel natural. I had to ask myself, okay, where do I feel more at ease? And a place where I feel really relaxed is deep within the forest. It's like sitting on a tree, listening to the birds, looking at like trees and mushrooms and feeling the air of a forest made me always good. And so like bringing the forest inside the house was to me like there's many things that are used as decoration that have just been salvaged from what I found in the forest. And there's like these branches, they were a walnut tree that was pruned. And so I salvaged the branches and then designed the kitchen around them. And also because it was at the time of the year, there's two times of the year where you can take the bark off trees really easily. One is when the sap goes down mid-autumn or at the beginning of spring. And these were pruned at the beginning of spring, so the sap was going up. So it was easy to harvest the bark. And so if you look behind the cabinet doors, they're actually like the bark of those branches that was harvested and then weaved. And so the bark re-dries and then makes it like kind of leathery.
That's a lot of work though, right?
Yeah, it is. But I wanted to debark them anyway, so while I was doing it, might as well harvest the other materials.
And is your bed handcrafted too?
Yeah, same kind of design as the kitchen. Like that was from the same tree that was pruned. I made the bed based on the bits of wood that I could salvage.
And is that a light above your bed?
Yeah.
What's the material that's used?
You just put paper over a light and makes a nice lampshade.
So the electric, you did electric.
Yeah, I have electricity, especially on a sunny day like this. I have no issue of electricity. It's just I have 800 watts of solar panels and a capacity of 5 kilowatt hour. So that means that, for instance, a light would only use something like 4 watts. The only thing really that would use a lot of is having like electricity stoves or heaters, electric heaters. But other than that, then I don't really have much problem even in the winter.
How did you know how to wire because you're not an electrician, but this looks really conventional. I mean, like you've wired through the walls and...
Actually, it's not that difficult to like install electricity. I did it with my dad, but none of us are professional electricians. But like compared to like working with water, electricity is a piece of cake.
Can you explain how your system works?
Yeah,
now that I see that you have running water.
Yeah, so the water from the bit back there comes over here, and then it's disseminated between all the things that use water. So now I turn on the tap and I have normal flowing water.
And that's all what we saw above?
Yeah, and if I just leave it on, then it's not as if like I'm wasting water. It's the same flow of water. It's just further down. Yeah.
It's gray water. You don't put any soaps in or any kind of...
No. The toilet is just a standard dry toilet, you see.
And no smell at all?
No, it's like a bucket. It's just a bucket.
Bucket system.
You take the bucket and then afterwards it's going to be used in the garden.
Yep. And you let it sit for a year or so.
Yeah.
And here underneath, where are they all going?
This one over here goes into this. And so, for instance, you always have like a valve where you can just shut the flow in order to do some maintenance on it. And yeah. Getting flowing water inside the house was not that much of a problem. The problem is more like to get hot water. For that as well, I have like those two systems. For the summer, it's not a problem because I have a thermal solar panel where you just have like water flowing through those panels and it's heated normally by the sun and just fills in a big tank. But for the time of the year where you don't get that, then I have to like do the system inside the kitchen where I just put a big bucket of water on top. and then send it back up with this pump inside this. And then that's my reserve of hot water that I can then use inside the shower. And like that's plenty, that's like 30 liters. And 30 liter, I use half of it for a whole shower.
So this is coming from the stove. You're heating. Okay, and so that's why it comes right back. I mean, you see it's as close as
From
possible.
the other side, from the kitchen, yeah. Because you don't want to take cold showers, especially in the winter. So the whole point is not to try to inflict yourself some pain for the sake of purity. When there's a clever system that allows you to have it without the harm, then why not?
And you bake your own bread as well.
Yeah.
And you put the plumbing into the wall. Like, where would the plumbing come from here?
The plumbing is hidden, it comes from behind here.
Very conventional, actually.
Yeah, for plumbing, it's pretty difficult to not do non-conventional because you need those waterproof material like plastic. So you see there's like a casserole dish that I just put everything in there, put it in the oven for half an hour, and then transferred it into the Swedish oven. And then it has been cooking for the last 12 hours. And so now it's like you have like warm bean soup.
Smells good. And these are the local beans that you...
Yeah, it's the bean from the garden. This is a bean that kind of has a taste of chestnuts. We found it in a seed exchange fair. We first grew it in the communal garden and found out that it was actually well suited to the local climate here, and it was well productive. So we like shared the seeds with all of the inhabitants of the village. So I grew some this year on my land as well. And then I made wild mushrooms empanadas.
But in your oven?
Yeah, in the oven, yeah. So these are made with chanterelles. And a few vegetables from the garden as well, like onion, carrots, and the chanterelles are wild mushrooms that you find in the forest.
Forage.
Yeah. The shiitake are the ones that I grow. I have like something that can be interesting to show you is like, that's mushrooms. Those are like shiitake mushrooms that I'm like growing on grain before introducing them into logs that I showed you outside. And so over here you see like the mycelium of the mushroom that's like floating in sugary water. I can extract it with a needle and then introduce it in doughs that are filled with grain. So you can see the mushroom growing on top of it.
How long has that been growing?
5 days.
Only 5 days?
Yeah.
Goes fast.
Yeah. You get to pick your favorite spoons as well.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I'm guessing you made these soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the shape of them. Did it take a long time to carve?
No, I got it down to 1 hour. I can make one in an hour, yeah, from a bit of wood. I started spoon carving before trying my hand as like carving beams for the house. And so skills are transferable. So once you actually use your hands to make something, then you can learn more easily other things.
Is that soup?
Yeah, it's like a minestrone soup. Feel free to
Thank you so
serve some.
much.
Oh yeah, also there. I want you to try this. It's called Jun. It's kombucha, but made with honey instead of sugar.
And then you filter water?
Yeah, with this. And yeah, feel free to have these as well. The whole house was built basically with the kitchen in mind. My only purpose was to have something that I feel confident in cooking in. And so, because I really always loved cooking. And so in past apartments, I never really had a kitchen that I could do everything in. But so this one, I tried to implement all the designs of the things that I thought, oh, if I had that, then I could do this particular recipe. Do you want to try some?
Sure, I'll have a little.
I flavored it with the dried mandarins and some rosemary.
Oh, it's really good.
And the spoons, too. Can you pass me the spoons?
It's tastier to eat with wood.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Oh, what is
food
this?
that's tasty.
This one is cherry, but it's old now, so it doesn't smell like anything. That's one of my first ones. Do you want some kombucha?
Of course, yeah, I'll try some. Thank you.
And so these are the beans we saw before?
Yeah.
So carrots, beans, and onion all from the garden?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And that's to put the feet on this.
Warm blood.
It's wool, right?
That's my first attempt at tanning, just because somebody was throwing them away. So I was like, well, if the sheep had to die for something, I might as well use the...
What happens when it rains? Does it affect, because it's
Yeah,
all
that's
made
what I
out
was
of
thinking.
earth, like...
Yeah, but you see, like,
Yeah.
the roof overhang is far enough that the walls don't get splashed on.
What about when there's wind? Does it not?
Yeah, sometimes when there's really strong winds and lateral rains, then the walls just take in some water, but then they dry off.
What made you want to live off grid and make your own house?
That means I can live in a way where I don't need to rely on a 9 to 5, and so I can dedicate more of my time to projects that I take care of. And yeah.
Do you have work then?
I took work for the past 2 years, but my contract ended at the end of this year. But I can easily live off that, yeah. It's like I'm already autonomous. I don't really have any living expenses. Like I said, €200 a month for going out with friends and doing fun stuff. So this it's a storage area.
So here, when you lived here, you had...
Up there, there's the mezzanine. So here's the upstairs where I used to sleep while building, but right now it's a bit of a mess. It's just where I store bits and bobs. And here's the bucket of walnuts. That's a year harvest, and that will be 3 or 4 years worth. And also here you have all the food storage. So like more of those dried fruits and dried mushrooms, a lot of apple preserves and tomato sauce and buckets of grain. And
How long did you live in here?
2 years. But my parents don't live that far away, so for the winter I kind of retreated back there. One of the things when choosing a location is like you don't want to be completely cut off from any social networks that you might have.
What did you consider when you bought the property?
Like a proximity to a train station to live car free. And so right now I'm like 15 minutes away from a train station by bike.
So there's young people around, like you don't feel like you're...
I'm not isolated. Now I have a thriving social life here, as much as I did in the city. The way of socializing in the countryside is different than in the city. You tend to socialize more in people's houses. So I like host house parties more, like do board game nights.
Is that dragonfly like?
Yeah, it died underneath the skylight.
There's also like a feather.
Nature.
Yeah,
Kind of
and it's a beautiful feather because you see it has these iridescence, like based on the lights. It's a starling feather.
What's this? Is it a camping stove?
Yeah, that's kind of like the autonomy cheat, is to have like a gas stove, because sometimes you just want to like reheat something or something, and so having just a bit of but I don't use that much. It's like you can see like this much gas that would last me for maybe 2 years, so that's like €30 worth of gas for 2 years.
Tell me about your stove.
That's actually like something that everybody in this area used up until maybe 50 years ago, and nowadays everybody is like throwing them away, and like people don't really have a use for them anymore. They would have a use for them if they were still used to the way of like living based around the stove, because it's not as easy as turning your oven on. Here you have like to control the temperature by adjusting the flow of air. Like over here, like you put all your wood in there, and then with that, like you control the flow of air that goes in. So right now I open it fully so that the fire would start. But if I want to, like afterwards, like you have an indicator of the temperature in the oven. And so sometimes it goes all the way to like 350 degrees, which is way too hot to cook anything in it. So you have to reduce the flow of air. And it's not instantaneous. It takes a while for the temperature to adjust. But once you get used to it, it just would not make sense for me to go back to like using other stoves as well.
And that's for bread and for
For everything, pizza, casserole dishes, and
And in the summer?
in the summer I have like an abundance of electricity, as I say, so I can use these. Like a rice cooker is a really useful tool, because it's not just to make rice, it's like a casserole dish, so you can just make full meals in there and just let it cook, and that's as well, it's pretty useful. One of the things with small spaces is that it's nice to have flexible spaces. For instance, like I like the versatility of tatami mats, in the sense that, okay, like they're my couch. I just come here to like read a book or like watch a movie on the computer. I have like the small table that I can drink tea out of, and but also like that can easily, you can like roll out a futon on it, and it makes a bed to host friends when they come visit. The size of the awning, they're calculated based on the location of the house. So in the summer, you don't get any sun inside. In June, you find it here. In like July, you find it here, August here, and then further. And like right now in like December, January, it lights all the way up to the back wall. Yeah. So that contributes to like heating the house up. I kind of like working with round wood. Square wood is much easier to work with, obviously, but it's not as aesthetically pleasing to me than having like a wood like that with all of its grainy features that you have to like take into account when you work with it, but that makes it more beautiful, I think. Yeah, so like there's little, like all of it is handmade. It's like using round wood in order to make shelves. It's pretty easy. You just make like notches in it, and then you can just slide some planks in it, and then it holds. So the more difficult bit is to try to find like a piece of wood that's straight.
And then here, so instead of like building something into the wall, you hang the shelves.
Yeah, because those walls, I can't actually build into them because they're very thin.
And I see more.
Ah, yeah, the willow, that's also basket weaving.
You did that.
Like my ex did that.
What about the thing on the shelf, the little porcelain?
That's vinegar pot. Yeah, so it's like you add bits of wine in it, and then it like makes you vinegar over time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's that easy. Just leave it.
It's that easy. I mean, vinegar, the term vinegar means basically like a vin that has gone bad. Aigre is sour. Yeah, so sour wine.
Those sweet potatoes?
No, they're mandarins. Do you want to try?
Okay, taste test. Cheers. Oh, it tastes like candy.
Yeah.
Is it sweet?
Because when you dry things, you actually concentrate the sugars. I found them way too sour. It was like doing some bad things to my teeth whenever I was eating them. But by drying them, they actually got much better.
You even have your own spices.
It's usually things I use for teas. So I have like mint, some nettles, mugwort, yarrow, even just a simple one like the nettle. Nettle is really rich in nutrients and you can feed yourself fully by only eating nettle. I don't recommend that because it's kind of a dull lifestyle. Here I crushed it finely. Yeah. So this one I can use it to make like a matcha substitute, but without caffeine. A plant that's so abundant and that you don't really need to do anything in order to grow it. This one I kind of use it as a substitute for mate, like drinking it in there. I eat it a lot, so I'm probably constituted at like 50% nettle at this point. Like a nettle recipe that everybody always talks about is like nettle soup. Yeah. But there's so much more than that. It's like you can just crush it, turn it into a pesto and then mix it and everything. Make nettle falafel. Like making a nettle pesto is like my go-to recipe when I don't have the time.
You think you are trading off anything in your house versus like the life you had at your home growing up?
I don't think so. I feel like, okay, it takes maybe a few years for the systems to like put themselves into place. That's a better system. You just put it in this bit. Once they're into place, then it's all really easy to just cruise along. And there is much easier to open them up. So yeah, with that one you can just do it industrially. Yeah. So it's like 2 years of hardship to endure in order to move into a place that's well functioning. And that's and that's maybe 1/5 of what I have back in the shed.
This house reminds me of, there's this game I used to play. There's a lot of houses that have kind of this cool wood.
I thought you were going to say Hobbit house, which is usually what I hear. Yeah.
People say that, they think.
People say that. They hear Northern House, they think Hobbits. But that makes sense. I mean, what did we like about the Hobbits in Lord of the Rings is like the way they live and like community-based, the very wholesome lifestyle.
And that cozy, right? There was always so cozy. Earth and house is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?